up, long players? Welcome to the long play listening party. We are trying something new tonight. We're just kind of hanging out, seeing if we can capture a bit of the vibe that we have when the mics are off, and we're just talking, the three of us. Background music by Selvage tonight, and we're going to hear a track from Nate at the end, but it's not anything we're really going to talk about. Links will be in the show notes. We were in the middle of a discussion about DAWs and recording, and Nate was about to make the next point. Nate, what's on your mind?
Well, I just forgot exactly what Royce was saying, but my point was responding to him about working in Pro Tools today, and I was mixing a song, and it was giving those errors, but I was running like a full mix session. I had 8 additional tracks. I had a couple decent plug-in chains and everything, and I was kind of doing some editing in the arrangement view. I was dragging, like, kind of control click dragging audio region, and that's when it would freeze up. But then I could like hit play and it would play again. But
so it would stop playing, or it would like completely lock up the program?
No, it just stopped playing. But I think we were talking about learning different DAWs and editing, and I was kind of gonna jump off that point by talking about editing in Pro Tools, and how it wasn't until this kind of big session and like I was doing different things that I normally wouldn't be doing if I was just mixing. I'd just be kind of looking and turning things and whatever. So mixing is nice. I like the feel of mixing, but trying to create is, like you said, it feels pretty like utilitarian.
Yeah, very much.
So you guys both, you move between DAWs depending on what you're trying to do and what kind of stage of the process you're in. I was Pro Tools only up until 4 or 5 years ago. I made a hard switch to Reaper, and I've been Reaper ever since. So this idea of kind of moving around between DAWs is different to me.
Yeah, man, I got to the point where like I just treat them like sneakers, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, it just depends on what the task is. I love Pro Tools I love it for editing. Like, I can edit quickly and I don't have to think about it. I can see the edits. I know what's coming up. I mean, like, everything. Mixing and mastering. I can do it all in Pro Tools, but I just don't have fun creating in Pro Tools. It feels like work. And like I said before, I love the freedom of Logic. I like everything about Logic. I just don't know.
See, I think Logic would be fun to do both in, like to create, and then it seems like mixing would feel a little more natural than it does in Ableton. Just because it does have it's got that dedicated. You can make it a dedicated view, right? Like that.
Yeah. Man, you have so many dedicated views. In
you can
Logic.
customize it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I really enjoy it, man. But
it's hard to learn. I probably just need to sit down with it for like 2 days and really learn it. But it just felt like I was forcing myself to do it. Where like once I started working back in Ableton, it was like I knew what I was doing. I wasn't even really thinking about it. I was like, yeah, I'm making a song now. I'm not actually like trying to figure out like, okay.
Yeah, I think it's like guitars, right? Like, everybody doesn't like the same guitars or the same way they feel. It's your workflow. And Logic, for me, I just never really had to think about. I mean, never. Like, from the very first time because I started with Logic way back when it was eMagic. I don't know if you guys knew that. They were like a German company that made Logic, and It was completely different than once Apple got a hold of it, but I was using it then, and it was sick, man. Heck, like the most creative sound libraries. You could find anything you wanted in any second. So, I used it for mixing. If I had something in there, or I recorded a bunch of people in there and I really didn't want to try to move stuff over or whatever, I would mix in there. And Logic works seamlessly with Pro Tools. Like, I could use Logic like a tape deck right into Pro Tools through Rewire, and never even actually have to worry about like transferring files, like just do the whole thing. It was slick. I liked it. I never did update to 10, and man, that's been forever ago. So I'm in a box, and I think Ableton is the next one to tackle. I'm learning Digital Performer right now.
Yeah, because you need to, right? Didn't you? Because your studio went to Motu, didn't it?
Yeah, we everything, all the gear that we had in that big space, we got rid of it. It's just so that we needed better syncing issues. You know what I mean? Like, without getting into Pro Tools, where you're gonna spend $20,000 just to try to sync video and all that kind of stuff. And Motu is always known for time, and it works perfectly. Because over there, our workflow is a couple of cameras, a live switcher, and then all the audio. And I'm mixing live, and it's all got to be married up in real time. So it's just different. But man, that's a sweet little setup. And Digital Performer, it's like when you think you want to do something, you reach for something, and it makes sense to be where it's at. You know what I'm saying? Whereas people swear by Studio One. I hate Studio One. Out of every DAW I've ever used, that's the one that I like the least. I think it's a blend of, it doesn't know what it wants to be. It has kind of an identity problem, right? Like, it doesn't know if it wants to be a professional studio DAW, or if it wants to be a production DAW, or
did you spend a lot of time in it?
Like 4 years,
because my interface is Personas, so I have a license for the artist, the Artist 5, and I was wondering if I downloaded it obviously, and I have it, but I really haven't opened it, other than I think I opened it once, and like it scanned all my plugins, so I sat there for like 5 minutes.
I watch a lot of people rave about it. I watch a ton of tutorials, and the way they use it all makes sense to me. It's just not the way I work, and I think it's a workflow thing. Like, I want to be able to create. I don't want to have to think about it. You know what I'm saying? Once I start thinking about it, I just lose the mood. Like, it's just a job, And I don't want to feel like that. And maybe I could have spent another 4 years and mastered it, but I needed to move on. It did have limitations for what we're doing over there, so I should come over there and watch you use Ableton.
Yeah, man, anytime. For sure, you're invited. Like I said, I'm not a super user. There's a Twitch channel, KJ Saka, does Ableton hacks. I think I can't remember if it's probably completely wrong. I thought it was Wednesday or Friday. But he has like 3, at least that I know of, 3 times a week he's on Twitch. He's doing like drum stuff on like Mondays. I think like 60-minute songwriting on another day, and then he does Ableton hacks, and it's like 2:00 in the afternoon or something. And I try to like watch it, but I usually have to work. So, but he would be a good person to check out if you get a chance. I'm sure they're archived and you can watch whatever episodes.
I pulled it up. And I was listening to Pro Tools Expert this week, and they were doing a podcast over, do you need Pro Tools to be a professional? Which was a very interesting podcast. But what they towards the end, and they didn't talk about it all the way through the show, really, was Reaper. And they were talking to people about what their favorite DAWs are. And one guy was like, I was a Pro Tools dude. I switched to Reaper. I've never looked back. It made me think of you, Howie.
It's me. It's me. I'm not gonna do it now, but if anybody out there needs the hard sell, I'll give it to you. But also, you can it's free to try for like, I don't know what the deal is now. I mean, you could basically try it for like 30 days or something. Licenses are super affordable. So it's really easy to try if you want to get your feet wet with Reaper.
Okay.
Well, I know I've got questions for each of you. I've thought about ahead of time. I don't know if we want to do them, or Royce, I know you've got some thoughts about last week's episode with my album Your Pain Matters. You might have a question for me, so I don't know if we want to get into it, or should I ask somebody a question?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, you're ready. Okay, so here's my question for you. I'm giving you $5 million.
Okay.
All right, and I picked that number.
Oh, Howie got questions.
I got questions.
Yeah.
I picked that number because
he's got
it's
questions
enough
for you.
You know, you could build something really nice, or you know, you could travel and work on the road, you know, or you could buy just crazy gear, but it's not enough to do everything.
I got you.
Right? It's not like Jay-Z money or whatever. So I'm giving you $5 million tonight. What do you do with it? What do you do with it musically? What do you do with it professionally? You know, where does because what I'm really trying to get at is like, where does your heart go? What is interesting to you if you don't really have to work, right? You could put it in the bank and just do whatever you want, you know, if you were pretty conscious about it. So that's an option too. So that's what I'm trying to get at.
I actually have a $1 million goal. And
okay.
So for me, what I think about is, if you think about like really combating things like racism or sexism or things of those natures, it's really through images, you know? And as creatives, we have the greatest ability to affect people's thoughts through our art. So that's the kind of stuff that in the dream world, I'd like to just make art that has great depictions has other stories about black men that we don't get to see. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
All the different variations of it. Black Republicans, they're okay. It's okay. They're still part of the group. You know what I mean? Like, but just, that's what I would do. I'd create like a lot of different type of art that children could grow up and see themselves. Like, no matter what situation they're in, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, this guy's doing that thing. I want to go do that thing, and just be able to get into it. Because like a lot of stuff that we have, a lot of what you're dealing with racism and sexism and all the isms really are your preconceived notions of who people are. You know, if you change those narratives, then you can begin to have conversations, because people don't just have walls go up. So that's what I would do with that $5 million for sure.
All mediums. I mean, images, movies, music.
Yeah. I would probably, what I would like to focus on is creating movies that are centered around music, so they wouldn't be like feature films or anything like that. They would literally be like music videos, kind of, but more like stories, you know, that can be told through a music video, and give people everything that they like about art, and give them the music, give them the visuals, but a good story to go along with it, and just team up with other people who have ideas and stories that they'd like to put out there, you know, for people to see. So yeah,
so this is
$5 million.
This is seed
gone.
money for your production company.
Yeah, yeah.
I see, and I mean, you still got to have a business sense about it, right? Because you're not going to get very far with just $5 million if your stories don't make it back.
Right.
So you've got to break even or turn a little bit of profit so that you can make the next one.
Exactly.
I think that's perfect.
What would you do with $5 million?
Oh, I didn't. You have a different question for me. I didn't plan on it.
See, now I gotta follow Royce and Howie's like, no, I'm not. That was perfect.
No, you have a different question for me. You wanted to talk to me about local music or something. You said from your email.
Yeah. So, we were talking about, or you had sent me an email. We were talking about the Say Our Laveau project with Approach, and you had originally, there were some names or something that you had gotten confused on, and you were kind of apologizing for it. But what it got me to thinking was like, what does this scene look like to outsiders? If you came to Kansas City, and not the whole scene, but also genre specific, because you play music or you participate in music across so many different genres. I just wonder what those cultures are like. What was your impression when you initially got here? Has that changed? Is it still the same? And any other thoughts that you might have?
Yeah, so the first kind of scene I was in was Lincoln, Nebraska, 97, 98 kind of. So okay. I made a couple friends. I was in high school. I was a freshman. Made a couple friends that year. One of them played drums. Older guys, right? So one of them played drums in a local band. The other one introduced me to Fugazi and the Afghan Wigs and some really like formative bands, and kind of real alternative bands, right, that weren't on the radio. So the Lincoln scene was the first scene I was in, and then I spent a year in Minneapolis, and I was just working, and I didn't really make a lot of friends up there, so I was only there for a year, but I went to shows every weekend and, bought every local CD I could get my hands on. So that was I wasn't really participating. I was just going out a lot. And so then I came to Kansas City, and I told the story last week about kind of joining 5 Star Crush. And so that was when I first came to Kansas City, 2006. It was really, I kind of duplicated what I did in Minneapolis, right? So I was like reading the pitch. If they would review something, I would check it out. If I liked it at all, I would buy it, and just start grabbing CDs, kind of any genre. And then, when I first joined a band, the bands we were playing with, and we were playing at the Hurricane, for those of us who remember the Hurricane, and the Brick.
I did a bunch of open mic nights there.
Yeah. So rock early, hip hop late, right? That was how it would go. And I guess, so I loved a lot of music. I discovered Approach real early on. My favorite Kansas City band to this day is the Architects, who I think they might literally be, some days of my life, they are my favorite band on earth, period.
Nice. Do you listen to other Americans?
Yeah. I listen to anything the Phillips brothers do. I'm in.
Yeah. And Mensa Death Squad, that's pretty dope too.
Yeah. He's doing some interesting stuff.
Man.
Let's get all that in the show notes for those of us who don't know.
links galore.
Yeah, and I dropped the ball. Like I was gonna just to get off track for just a second.
Sure.
I was gonna make notes of like, okay, like this little moment here, like that'd be good to put on a little clip, spread it out, and then I just decided I was gonna talk and listen to you guys. And I haven't done anything.
Yeah, we endorse. That's totally fine. We endorse that plan.
But
I guess,
yeah.
Yeah, the first thing that struck me, and this is ancient history now, but the first thing that struck me in Kansas City was the scene was not as dense as Minneapolis. Like musicians per capita in Minneapolis was so high.
Gotcha.
And when I came to Kansas City, it was more spread out. The clubs were farther apart. the shows weren't as full for local bands. And I don't know, I don't want to go through 15 years of history, but I listen to almost everything. I'll check out anything local and see what it's like. I very much believe, and this goes back to Lincoln, and which was kind of a punk rock scene at that time. This kind of the ethic of it takes everybody to make a scene, and
right.
It's really important to me. Like whenever Dark Satellites or Mars Lights plays a show or anything, we're there early to load in. We watch every band like up front, right? And we're always there for the first act, and we're there for the last act, and we're not back at the bar. We're in the crowd making the scene happen. And that kind of thing is really important to me, is to just, you got to put a little bit out there. Everybody has to put a little bit out there so that cool stuff happens.
Yeah, I agree with that. Interesting.
Yeah,
that was my question. That was one of my questions.
All right.
You want to throw one out, Nate, or? If you're not ready, I've got one on deck.
Yeah, I've got one for Nate too. So.
Well, I know I have kind of the same question for you both. It's a topic that I think both of you would be able to speak on, and I couldn't think of two questions each. I'm trying to now.
You will. Don't worry about it.
I will. Just hit us.
The one that either of you two, I guess, could answer is probably could answer is just related. Like, I know that when Jarrett and Howie were talking, Jarrett brought up kind of he sees a little bit of the entrepreneurial kind of mojo in what you're doing, Howie, and your website and where you kind of blog, you put up videos and have all your releases and stuff. That's always something that I've wanted to have the consistency to do, and I even had a website up and stuff, but I could just never like blog on a regular basis. It always just felt like, I would talk to myself and I'm like, I don't need to, write this somewhere else. So I just kind of wanted to ask like when that started and how that started. And you said that, you kind of got into it a little bit when you talked about what you did, as far as like, being parts of the scene and trying to make the scene happen. So, can you talk a little bit about that, like just kind of where you got going and like your website and the thoughts behind it and all that?
Yeah, so I don't think of myself as entrepreneurial at all, because I don't make any money. Because to me, it's like curating an art museum, right? So it's much more. I think of myself as more a curator than a business person, and I see my role as to make it as easy as possible for anyone who's interested to access the art. So if you go to MrFuriousRecords.com, every release is there on the sidebar, every page, one click, you can hear anything we've ever put out. So like
you're like one of the most organized people I know. Like,
and that's important to me to have. Like, I want as few clicks as possible between someone out there who wants to listen and the music itself. But I'm not any good at promoting it at all.
Right.
And the blogging thing, that really came from Rob. Rob was the first person. Rob from Arturo Got the Shaft. He's been on the show a couple times. He was the first person I knew with the blog. And so that really kind of I really follow that model to this day, which is just, it's like it's almost like a a chronicle of what's going on and our musical adventures. It's almost like taking notes on the exploration, right? So it's a little bit self-referential about what we're doing and everything, but it's also designed to be read by someone who's not necessarily on the journey themselves or is on a different journey. So that if you were interested, you want to retrace these steps or check out this territory, you'd have some guidance maybe, or somebody else's field notes to guide you along.
Oh, same question to me?
Well, yeah, because obviously you own and run the studio. And you put a lot of hard work and sweat into that. And so kind of like you've kind of talked about, like, you know, working for yourself and being your own boss and all that, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as far as with music, I guess it was twofold. I always knew I wanted to do music in a serious way, but it wasn't until my son was born and I was like reading a magazine and they were saying that most children go into the same professions that their parents do. Like 70% of kids go into the same profession that their parents do. And I made a good living. I was working in the restaurants and stuff, but I immediately thought, like, there's no way I want my kid to be relegated to every weekend and holiday slaving away at some restaurant. And I think that was the moment where I really started like trying to figure out where I was going to get serious in life. And I came across this article that was talking about audio engineers, and I was just like, I didn't even know what that was. And I was kind of reading through it and I was like, well, this sounds like a career. You know what I mean? Like you could do this and earn a living even if you don't yourself have a hit, you know? And so once I went to school for audio engineering, it would be like getting a degree in anything and then going to do something different. I just always knew that I had to continue to do that. But about 35, I was like, man, I don't know if I want to have to be on the road forever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's fun when you're 25, you know what I'm saying? But I like sleeping on clean sheets and shit like that.
Yeah.
And so I just started looking for a way to kind of pivot. And, you know, there are people who go to school just for business. It doesn't matter what business they're in, they're business people. And I don't think that that's necessarily always what an entrepreneur is. Like, my job is to solve problems for other people and get paid for it. And I just happen to do that through audio and music. And I think it's really just a decision, man. It was just a decision, like, that I made when I was like 22. And then everything just kind of worked out, maybe. I don't know. So, there wasn't like some overarching plan, I promise you that. But, you know, sometimes that's what you need. Yeah. You need to just step out there. You know, right. You got to, let me rephrase. You still need to pay your mortgage, so you can't just jump out there, but you need to just take a step in the right direction.
Well, when you started RAOM, Random Accent Music, with Jason, was that like what prompted that? Like what made you say like I'm gonna partner with this in the studio?
Well, I was working with Pro and doing the stuff for Datura, and I started really going serious and hard with him in like 2010, and by 2012, like I wasn't rich, you know what I'm saying, but I was earning a living and I could pay my bills. You know, I had an idea how much money I was going to make, you know what I mean? And I was still doing shows, and I kind of stepped off on my own and started producing people and putting shows together. And I did this music video, the song, They Wanna Be, you know, Everything They Wanna Be was this song that I did. And we were doing this James Bond kind of themed music video for it, but I couldn't find poker tables. And I was working at the taxi company at the time, Yellow Cab downtown. And one of the guys that I was telling about this music video, he was just like excited. Like, oh my God, you doing a music video? I was like, yeah, man, but I can't find poker tables. And he's like, well, don't you worry about it. I'm going to find some poker tables. And he did. And some like random dude showed up in my house with these poker tables. And I got to talking to him. And he said that, you know, he really liked me, liked what I was trying to do. Wanted to know if he could get my number. And so I gave him my number. And like a year later, he called me and was like, I want to introduce you to somebody. I know this guy. He wants to open up a recording studio. He's been checking you out and he thinks you're perfect for it. Right. And I was like, okay. You know what I mean? Like, all right, you know, I'll come down and entertain this. And I met Jason and he seemed legit, and we really started hashing out like a plan for it. Bought the building, went in and started working. And, you know, once the building was bought, it was like, oh, I guess this shit is real. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
I didn't do shows or anything for like 2 years. We were just kind of in like building mode. But that's how I got into doing that down there. And then, you know, you're talking about being an entrepreneur. Like I knew I was going to record audio, but that was it. That was the only like...
You had to figure all that out.
Yeah. I had a bunch of artists that I was working with at the time, so I was already recording a bunch of people out of my basement, so it didn't seem far-fetched. But I never would have thought I was going to be doing like commercials, you know? So haphazard. That's been my life.
I don't think there's any other way in the audio business. I mean... I think that's
space is slick,
everybody's
man.
story.
Like, you know, like your control room and I mean, it's legit. It's a good spot to listen to music.
It was a lot of we learned a lot. You know what I mean? I learned way more about audio when I was able to build a space from the ground up and kind of like think about all the things that you've always tried to work around, you know, like clean power, you know, just something like that just protects your gear. If you think about it, you know, like things like that. And all your music is energy. So if the energy that you get, it's only going to sound as good as the power you have, you know? So it was fun, man. It was really, really fun. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. And I'm happy that it worked out, you know? Because I'm sure it went south for a lot of people in much nicer facilities than mine, especially in 2020. Like I've seen people come and go since we opened up, like 2012. We've been there. I've been there that long. He's been there since 2011.
So it sounds like you did a lot of live sound between school and when the studio started to happen.
Yeah, so not much live sound. I did some live sound. But the second I came out of, well, even before I went to school, I had like an old Roland VS880 that I was like, me and my homies were like making beats on. I don't know what the hell we were using back then. Like just whatever we could get our hands on. Sometimes it was like, everybody grab something, we're going to go. You rap, you know what I mean? Like, that's how we kind of did stuff. So I've always kind of been doing that, but yeah, I did a lot of recording. Well, once I started selling like records and stuff, like a lot of people wanted to come and record with me. They could hear that I could get a better sound with the same gear or something like that. So they would come over to the house and we'd record in my basement. It was crazy. I had a little sliding glass door because, you know, everybody's got smoke. You can't have that shit in your house. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it was interesting. It was real fun. And my girl, man, I love her. I tell her, I'm like, man, you're a special person. I don't know if I'm special in the way that you are. I always think it's interesting when two creatives live together. That seems really, really interesting. Maybe it allows, not living with a creative allows me to be a little more creatively selfish, maybe, or a little stingy. But clearly it works for people. So anyway, recording people in the basement and doing a lot of live shows. We were.
You have a lyric about being a basement in that track we're working on together this moment.
Oh yeah, we used to do it out the basement.
Yep.
Just to have a memory of us trying to make one. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Man, we were like, I was 16, and that's just what we did, man. I never even thought about it until I was an adult, and I was like, oh, you guys were playing football? You know, like I had no idea that people would put that kind of time into anything other than making music. I thought everybody was doing it, and we literally, like, everybody else was getting laid, man, and we were just like making records. You know what I'm saying? I remember, so fun fact, my dad was a legit street dude. And what I would do was I had this little keyboard and I would record everything on my tapes. And I had to play one keyboard and run stuff from another beat machine and play another tape into it to get like my whole recording. But I'd create like these 20-minute beats, you know, that were just I had no idea what I was going to do with them. And I go over there to these OGs and I'd be trying to like, yo, check out my tape, man. Listen to it. I remember the first time that one of them was like, hey, wait a minute. I actually like that one. Like, let that one play. I was like, yeah, God, I'm keep coming back, you know? But that was all I knew. I had never thought about like selling a record or getting famous. That never even crossed my mind. Until I got to LA, boy. That's all everybody talks about, you know? Nah, it's gotta have that spice.
Well, I think LA Stories is a different podcast, probably.
Yeah.
That's probably for sure.
Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. Yeah, I got one for you on that one.
Nate, do you want your question?
Well, there's no way of avoiding it, so you might as well just ask it.
It's not hard. It's about ambient music. So,
okay.
With your singles,
it's still hard.
It's not hard. With your singles, you're I think intentionally drifting, you know, a little bit in that direction. You've talked to me about being interested in kind of making some ambient music. We've talked about making some ambient music together, and we'll certainly do that at some point. So I'm just tell me about your history with kind of ambient music. What did you start listening to? When? And what kind of has you interested in it at this point of your life?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit difficult because you know, I don't know that I could say that I'm, you know, well versed in ambient music, but it's, I mean, to me, this is, you know, just the way that I think about it, it's sort of an offshoot of electronic music, so it was not at all like unnatural to you know, to want to bring that style into it. I think if you're always growing as a creative person, right? And to be honest with you, it wasn't like I don't know if I took it seriously until a little bit later in my adult life when I was like, dude, I should really pay more attention to, you know, everything that's going on. So that's kind of when I started taking things seriously. But I mean, I just, you know, back in like 2001, 2, 3, those years where I was playing music, more live music, but I was with DJ Not a DJ, and, you know, Jarrett and those guys, we just, you know, electronic music was what we were about, and that's what we listened to. So just starting from there, like, I'm trying to think of any like strictly ambient things. I don't know. I'm just not, you know, I'm losing my train of thought about specific artists that I would have, you know, been drawn to. But I think one of my big influences is Telephone Tel Aviv. Even though, I mean, there's plenty of tracks where there's ambient moments, but there's still a lot of energy and things going on in their music. But just that kind of down tempo, chill vibe, it's just stuff that I'm drawn to. I don't know if I would produce or write or think differently if I was more, I had more ability to write like aggressive type of, a more aggressive style. But just writing and creating things that are you're kind of allows you to just, I don't know, relax and kind of release things is what I'm drawn to. I think I don't think that you, at least I don't necessarily sit down with intention and that some people will sit down with attention, and that's what maybe their job is, to sit down with attention, or that's just how they are. They create things like, I'm going to sit down and write this song and write this style of music. I'm going to this is what it's going to sound like. But when I sit down and create it, it's kind of like a you're just trying to relax and like let things like, I don't know, it's gonna sound cheesy, flow out of you, but that's not what I mean.
But more intuitive.
You just sit down and you just let things out and you just release, and what comes out of it is what comes out of it. I definitely like, I don't want to get like on too much of a tangent, but that's what it is. It's wanting to have, you want your music to have emotion, but you want it, I don't know, I want space, and I want like breadth. Mostly that's how I feel. Like sometimes you'll write something that is really, like that's, it's in your face a lot, but my kind of internally and intrinsically, like I don't want stuff to have space and width and be something that you can kind of be drawn into, and that would be ambient, I guess.
That's a big one for sure. I mean, it's other things too, but yeah, that's a big one.
So Nate, when you're programming your drums, like, first of all, your music is always like, it feels very organized to me, so that's interesting to hear you say that it's not necessarily intentional. I thought that was just for, I don't know, I feel I'm more of kind of like a beat maker, so I'm always kind of like, what mood am I in, and then how do I capture it and then get back to it, you know what I mean? But anyway, my point is, it's like what you do with your drums feels super freeing to me as a rapper. And maybe because I was a 2000 late to 2010 whatever rapper, man, I just feel like I can write and write and write and write, and I'm always gonna have the support that I need. And sometimes I'm thinking, man, it would be nice to have a drum right here, and then there it is. So I'm just curious, like, what was that process? How did you said you didn't play drums or anything like that, right?
No.
So how did you?
I can play if I can sit down behind a kit and play some like basic rhythms, but I'm not.
Oh, that's to me that's playing drums. I can't even play the MPC like that. So that's playing drums to me.
Tell me to do like a proper fill, and then it's all the illusion just it's an illusion, Michael.
Give me like some background, like how did you develop your drum sound?
God, man, I don't know. Like I honestly, that's one of the areas that for a long time I was like, that's the kind of the weakest part of what of producing, and maybe it's mixing, that, and rather than actually programming patterns or making drums, but I think it comes from like a place of not wanting to be bored, but I love listening to like generically like chill beats, like on like those YouTube channels where it's like chill study beats or whatever, like that's not, I'm not saying it's the same thing over and over again, but it there's a sort of a hypnotizing sort of it's not
droning.
It's not meant for you to be paying attention, like, okay, what are they going to do next?
Right.
And I think overall, like an overarching view of what like the music I make isn't, I don't think, I'm not trying to make people like be like, okay, what's he gonna do next? Like, if you're listening to like modern drum and bass, or not like even more chill drum and bass, where it's like you're expecting things to happen, or like especially like dubstep and energetic music, like you're like, if stuff's not happening like every X number of bars, like you're like, okay, I'm getting bored. But when it comes to like programming drums, like I don't want there to be necessarily, unless it like that's the vibe where the song calls for it, like I don't want there to be like just a repetitive pattern looping drums. Like I want there to be variety, and I want there to be
I don't know, like, what everybody else needs.
64 or 128 patterns, like I want there to be like some sort of variation in something.
And I think,
and I guess that's contradictory to what I was saying before, but I don't know if that answered your question like you wanted to be answered. But like when I go about programming drums, like I'm like, I want a good beat, but I don't want it to be like a loop. I don't want like a 2 or 4 bar loop.
I think I can pull it together because you're very strong in kind of two sides that make a yin and a yang, right? So in the initial kind of
Thank you, Howie, because yes, that's what we need right now.
Yeah.
Somebody to rein that asshole in.
Wait,
we love
I miss
you,
something?
Nate. We love you, Nate.
I just felt like I went off on like a super.
No. Let me
That's
tie
what
it
we're here
together
for.
for you. Let me tie it together for you. So, and this is what I experienced in collaborating with you on Orbital Debris. There's, on the one hand,
now we got to play Orbital Debris. That some of the beds got to be Orbital Debris now.
Okay, we'll do that.
On this,
we'll do that. You're listening to a track off Orbital Debris right now.
Yeah, there you go.
But so on the one hand, you have this very free, very intuitive idea generation and playing and coming up with things, and you're never, in my experience with you, you're not necessarily content with the first thing you play, right? You want to try another idea and keep kind of assembling raw material. But then also when it comes to editing, you're very into editing and taking all that raw material and moving it around and chopping it up and making it do what you want it to do. And that's, I think, maybe where some of that drum programming comes in, and some of those variations that Royce is talking about, that it's not necessarily just the first little kick snare pattern that you lay down, but it's figuring out how can that change, and where can the hi-hats go, or what is there a different sound completely that we could use, and that it's pretty cool that you can move back and forth between those kind of two very different modes of music making, the intuitive ideas, anything goes, and then the editor, well, how are we going to put it together? And you're amazingly willing to just like toss out stuff that's not working, right? You might have come up with 4 great ideas that sound great in isolation, and then when it comes to the edit and putting it together, it's like, nope, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. and chopping it out.
Well, you know, I mean, a lot of that, and I'll be real, like, you know, probably some of those things that you do to make things interesting, when you're kind of moving at a slower pace than maybe someone else, you know, who's a slicker producer, who, you know, whose sounds or heavier or you know what I mean, like where they could get away with hey, you know, this is 8 bars of these like super dope drums, and they sound really good, and so you're not gonna get tired of listening to them. But like, say like someone who's at my level would be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna be able to make it sound like that attractive, so I'm gonna try to make, you know, give it a little eye candy or no ear candy, or, you know, something that can keep people's attention.
I love hearing
without being like
you guys talk,
boring,
because you say the most interesting things to me. Someone who's at your level, like, I can only dream of being at both of you guys' level. Like, you're as good as whoever you think you're talking about. You know, and that's a perfect segue into Your Pain Matters. Like, when I'm listening to that record, like, I feel it. I can listen to a lot of stuff that sounds big and huge and all that extra. I don't know, man. Like, to me, I've got a record called Mirrors and Smoke, which is a play on, you know, the smoke and mirrors or whatever. But that's the whole thing. Like, if you listen to that record, it's real raw. It's real, like, stripped down and all that, because the idea is that the lyrics were going to be the thing that drove it, and you weren't going to be drawn in by all that other stuff. Yeah, people have all those teams, and all those teams do create a sound that people are familiar with listening to on certain formats, but your music is equally as good as the best people out there. You know what I mean? Like, if 1 million people showed up on either one of your pages or sites right now, you would have that $5 million to go do whatever it is you want to do. You know? And that's really what it is, man. Like, my Signal Flow record, my Mirrors and Smoke record, I like them. They're great records, and they were where I was at the time. But, man, I sold hundreds of records. And it wasn't because I was the best artist in town. It's just that I was visible. I was available to people, and I continued to put music out and grow. People are very forgiving for people that are genuine. So, like, when you were talking about, you know, with Howie's blog, and you always wanted to kind of do that, the way I've kind of taken that stuff, man, it's just like, if I'm going to do this consistently, it's got to be something that's in it for me. I'm getting something out of it. I can't just post on Instagram because that's what everybody's doing. You know what I'm saying? If I'm going to give you something, it's got to connect in a bunch of different levels and layers. And your music does that, man. Like, both of your music, like, I'm a fan. You know what I'm saying? Like, a fan of what you guys do. When you send me shit and you're like, what do you think of this? I'm like, what? It's like Jay-Z just sent me a track, bro, and wants to know what I think. You know what I mean? Like, seriously.
Whatever.
Like, no, I'm super, super serious. Like, I'm not gassing you. I'm not, or anything like that. Like, we've worked together since, it's been like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, man.
We started working together.
We've got a good relationship.
I mean, I meet a lot of talented people, but I don't work with everybody. You know, that's the first thing I think that was the first entrepreneurial thing that I learned that changed it from a job to a career that I enjoy. It was like, yes, you need the money, but you need to search for, you know, people that you connect with and that you believe in, you know?
Yeah.
And you guys are, when you asked me to do this podcast, I was like, word, you know what I mean? Like, seriously. Like, don't second guess what you're doing. That's why I'm asking you about your drum production, or talking about, your pain matters. Like, I was listening to that shit and I was like, so wait a minute, you're just sitting in a room playing, like, and you can create this while you're in a space? That's amazing to me. Everything I do is programmed. You know what I mean? Everything I do is programmed.
But I think we agree that, I mean, the performance is what matters in the end, right? Whether it's a synthesizer, whether it's a rap vocal, whether it's, amazing performances can be programmed, but it's the connection between the musician and their instrument and themselves, what they're hearing, the people in the room, the people they're thinking of when they're performing. I mean, that beats any sound, any microphone, all that stuff is fun and great and wonderful, but it starts and ends with performance.
Man, and Wu-Tang Clan taught me that, because everything they made sound like garbage. You know what I mean? And that shit blew up. And you dig it. You like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but none of that stuff sounds like anything that would... That's why they record their own stuff, because engineers would be like, no, man, you can't do that. And they're like, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's actually a great example, because the performances are so good that they take those sounds that any other guys on those tracks, and it wouldn't necessarily been anything maybe.
No, it would
but
never.
The performances are so good, it actually converts the sound into a good sound because of the strength of the performance.
Right, because it's its own thing. It's not trying to it's not trying to be Ariana Grande. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's this raw, gritty dudes who live on an island. You know what I mean? And it worked. And I remember just being like super baffled, because in the 90s, like, everything was crispy clean. Like, you cut your head off with some of those records,
Yeah.
And then Wu-Tang Clan came out and was like, no, we're not doing none of that shit. We're going to hit record and 50 people are going to yell. I remember seeing them at the Granada and I was like, what the hell is going on? It was like a circus. You know what I mean? It was so interesting. No, I guess I'm just saying all that to say, man, I'm a true fan. Like, even if we're not having these podcasts, what you guys are doing, I mean, it's great music, feel good music, and it's genuine. Like how he said, I'm not doing any of this for money. Like, I'm just putting my heart and soul into it. But,
well, I think I can speak for all of us when I'm saying that we're all having a good time doing this podcast. And
yeah.
I think it's because it's, what we're all talking about tonight. I think, I think there's people, and especially artists that, that want to come on and want to talk about that kind of just real stuff that you probably don't talk about with anybody else other than like your own band or
well,
your producer
and if
or
that
whatever.
Everybody's so busy, but you do an album, but you have 100 200 hours into that, you know what I'm saying?
Easy.
And nobody to talk to about it.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, and again, like I said, it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized, like, not everybody's doing that. Like, not everybody's putting in all that time and effort, and they think it's stupid that you're doing it.
And sometimes we wonder if they're right.
I know. Every time I hit a button, I'm like, man.
Well, let's go out on. I mean, speaking of great music and great performances, we're gonna go out on a new track of Nate's. By the time you hear my voice, it'll be up on Bandcamp, and I think all the usual streaming stuff. Is that right, Nate?
Yeah. I mean, I submitted it for distribution today. Okay. So.
Well, we've got
means like
8 or 9
weeks.
days till the show comes out, probably. So.
Okay. Well.
Should be good.
It'll be on, or it'll be soon.
Soon. So tell us just a little bit about it, and then we'll let people hear it.
Oh well, I said I was gonna release a song every month, and I think I started mixing this one, and I picked it and started mixing it, and I think, see, Royce, you were busy, so I wasn't gonna bother you with anything. So I bothered Sean, and I was like, yo man, can you do like a chorus that like Heidi would sing, like you would write for Heidi, or you would have Heidi sing on one of your songs, like just a simple, not a lot of not like a story or anything, like, not that's I'm just saying, like, just of course
give him some ideas.
Right. And he was like, yeah, I could do that. And he sends me back, like, he texts me back what it was, and he sent me like a voice text, and it was like kind of singing it. And I was like, oh shit, man, that sounds good. Can you just do that and send it to me then? He was like, yeah, man, I'll get on that. And so I had waited a couple days, and I like shot him a text like, hey man, let me know when you're gonna get on that. He was like, yeah man, I'll get on that Friday, and then Friday came, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna start working on another track. And I was fighting with it, and then Sunday he sent me or forwarded me an email, man. It was Heidi's vocals. I was like, all right, well, and I don't know if I should say this or not, but I was like, I'm gonna take a day and so I can mix these vocals, and because the track was more or less mixed, and that was and let's bring things full circle to the first conversation we were having, which was the session in Pro Tools that I was talking about. Was this session?
Oh,
where,
Nice.
When I mixed it, I had to print I think 2 or 3 groups, because my old computer was like didn't like it, like Pro Tools. It's like, no, I'm not gonna do this for you. No. Like, I'm not gonna process all this shit for you. So fast forward to selling some laptops and going Mac Mini, which is it's kind of like a revelation, man. It's like it's like, wow, so I can actually unfreeze these tracks. I can mix like I was wanting to, and I threw on a bunch of extra tracks, a bunch of extra processing, and it was taking everything. So anyway,
Cool. What's it called, and where can people get it?
Yeah, you can cut some of this conversation out too, Howie. It's called Beauty in the Distance.
Well, and I have a question about it, man. So the drums on that are distinctively different than the previous few tracks that I've gotten from you. What did you do different, or what gear did you use different on that?
I think those drums are I think that was just a beat that I made on the analog rhythm, man. It was just and then I think I chopped up the kick a little bit to to make it different, to make it stuff that you wouldn't expect, even if it was a pattern.
Gotcha.
It was like you could listen to it and be like, okay, I'm not getting bored with that. And the bass line's just kind of like a chill little bouncy bass line, and Heidi did the perfect vocal comps for it from Approach's lyrics. So
Okay.
Very cool. Beauty in the Distance, was it?
that's right.
Beauty in the Distance. Get it at asterales.bandcamp.com.
That's right.
Link in the description. Enjoy the song. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.
Mm-hmm.